Carlson texts were found on the eve of the trial, triggering a crisis atop Fox. Tucker Carlson made extremely unpleasant words in private texts that were removed from court documents, going above and beyond what he said on his primetime show. The Fox board of directors and top executives made a shocking discovery the day before the commencement of Dominion Voting Systems' defamation trial against Fox News in a Delaware courtroom. This revelation contributed to the network and one of its top stars, Tucker Carlson, coming to an impasse. Beyond the incendiary, frequently racist words of his primetime show and anything revealed in the run-up to the trial, Mr. Carlson was shown in private conversations that had been suppressed in court documents, making extremely nasty and obscene remarks. The board and several senior executives were now learning about their specifics for the first time, igniting a crisis at the top level of the firm, according to two people with knowledge of the discussions, despite the fact that Fox's trial lawyers possessed these messages for months. The revelation increased the pressure on Fox executives as they looked for a way to prevent a trial where Mr. Carlson and many other network employees would be questioned about the substance of their private texts they exchanged following the 2020 presidential election. Fox settled that case for $787.5 million 2 days after the board made its discovery, which is thought to be the biggest defamation trial settlement ever. One of the most significant decisions Fox and its leaders, the father-son team of Rupert and Lachlan Murdoch, had made in years was to cut ties with the host of their highest-rated and most lucrative primetime program, and a face of the network in the Trump era, according to several people with knowledge of Fox's discussions. He was fired on Monday after receiving a call from Susan Scott, the CEO of Fox News Media. In the end, Lachlan Murdoch viewed removing Mr. Carlson as a business decision, just as he did the Dominion deal, according to one of the people with knowledge of the internal deliberations. Fox did not respond to inquiries after making the initial announcement that Fox News Media and Tucker Carlson have agreed to part ways. Requests for response from Mr. Carlson and the attorney defending him, Brian Friedman, went unanswered. The first time Mr. Carlson has spoken in front of the public since being fired was on Wednesday night, when he released a video to Twitter. Mr. Carlson avoided talking about his departure from Fox, but lashed out at completely irrelevant TV discussions, declaring that both political parties and their donors have reached consensus on what benefits them, and they actively collude to shut down any conversation about it. Honest people become powerful when they say what is true calmly and without embarrassment, he continued. The liars who have been trying to suppress them also back off at the same moment. They deteriorate. It is unknown why the redacted messages' contents were kept from the Fox board and other executives until right before the trial, which was intended to determine if Fox News had intentionally broadcast untrue statements about Dominion and its voting equipment after the 2020 election. In the weeks leading up to the trial, numerous articles were published about the unredacted portions of the documents, which included those in which Mr. Carlson made disparaging remarks about former President Donald J. Trump. According to the two persons, the board thought about hiring an independent law firm to look into the highly regarded host because they were worried about the damage Mr. Carlson's actions would have even outside of the Dominion issue. According to one of the persons briefed on the discussions, by the time the board did view the redacted material, Lachlan Murdoch had already begun pushing to negotiate an out-of-court settlement with Dominion after giving his negotiators the go-ahead to raise Fox's offer to the company. The decision to terminate Mr. Carlson came after Fox supported him for years despite protests and boycotts from advertisers over his use of conspiracy theories and stories of white grievance. Company executives have stated that a number of factors went into the decision to fire Mr. Carlson. They do, however, admit that he was ultimately fired as a result of learning what was in the censored text messages. The depth of the harm the lawsuit caused the corporation can be seen in the part the messages, produced during the Dominion discovery process, played in helping to terminate Mr. Carlson's career at Fox. Fox was continuously hit with negative revelations as the case moved forward to trial. The business could have avoided having to turn up Mr. Carlson's communications and those of others, including those from the personal accounts of both Murdochs, if it had resolved far earlier in the process. According to those acquainted with the Murdochs' criticisms, their patience ran out during the previous 2 years. With his conspiracy theory programming, Mr. Carlson became a virtually unaccountable figure who caused more problems by incorrectly claiming that the attack on the Capitol on January 6, 2021, was likely planned by the federal government. Then, as the Dominion case was about to go to trial, he claimed to his audience last month that security footage that Republican Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy had exclusively provided to Mr. Carlson showed that the riots was actually a nonviolent exercise. Although words made on his show only made up a minor portion of the Dominion litigation, the revelations relating to his messages played a larger impact than they should have and harmed the company's reputation. It is noteworthy that the publicly published communications could shock even when compared to the severe words Mr. Carlson was permitted to employ on broadcast. In one, he used a nasty and misogynistic slur to describe to the attorney Sidney Powell, who was a leading proponent of the disproved claim that the Dominion machines moved votes. The Wall Street Journal reported on Wednesday that among the censored communications was one in which he used a similar expletive to refer to a senior Fox News executive. One of the messages was particularly inflammatory, according to a person who was briefed on the contents of the redacted document, adding to the worry at the top of the organization. The contents of the message have not been read by the Times. When interviewing Mr. Carlson, Dominion attorneys intended to press the court about using the information in the censored texts. The attorneys prepared dozens of possible questions for the host, as well as possible responses they assumed Mr. Carlson would use to sidestep the most challenging ones, and they intended to nail him to the people who were most disrespectful to women. The presiding judge, Eric N. Davis of Delaware Superior Court, would have resolved the disagreement at trial. The two parties disagreed on how much or whether any of Mr. Carlson's unredacted messages would be seen in court. The threat posed by the messages has not, however, been eliminated by the resolution of the Dominion case. The redactions may yet become public because the New York Times, the Associated Press, and National Public Radio have disputed them, and Mr. Carlson has been further exposed by his misconduct. More evidence of embarrassing and improper behavior might come to light given how divisive he has been, both inside and outside of Fox News. For instance, Mr. Carlson is seen off-camera discussing his post-menopausal fans, and if they will like how he looks on the broadcast and video that the Times has received. He is heard calling a woman he likes yummy in another video. His texts may also be relevant to a defamation lawsuit being filed against Fox by the software provider Smartmatic, which is frequently linked to Dominion and the most extreme iterations of the stolen election conspiracy theory. They may also be relevant to a claim of a hostile and discriminatory workplace made by former Carlson producer Abby Grossberg. Several sources involved with the internal deliberations claim that all of this was taken into consideration when the network finally decided to cancel Mr. Carlson's show this week, and his run's conclusion followed a pattern. After the Murdochs decided they weren't worth the trouble, a number of well-known hosts and executives at Fox decided to leave their positions, including Bill O'Reilly, Glenn Beck, Sarah Palin, and Roger Ailes, the network's co-founder. Mr. Carlson became the most recent of these individuals with his abrupt exit. Despite the money his top-rated show brought in for the network and the political influence he could wield, Mr. Carlson eventually discovered that he worked at the Murdochs' pleasure. In the end, they made a decision that was as quick and impersonal as the two-paragraph statement the network released to announce his termination. "We thank him for his service."